All right, what's going on out there, guys? I hope everybody's out there staying high speed and working towards their goals, whatever they may be. So today on this video, I want to talk a little bit about more how you can survive and pass Ranger School! Specifically, how you can survive and pass land nav at Ranger School! So I actually get asked quite often how the land nav course is at Ranger School during Rap Week. Is it hard? Is it self-correcting? How many points? How much time do you have? Yada, yada, all these different things. I'm going to go ahead and break down the basics on that stuff so you know what to expect. And then I'm also going to give you some tips and tricks that you can take onto the course once you actually get to Rap Week to give you a higher chance of success at the course. The land nav course at Ranger School is known to get a lot of guys and gals kicked from Rap Week. And I'll go ahead and explain to you why that is and what are the most common reasons why that happens. And hopefully with all these tips and tricks and knowledge that I offer to you, you can take it, bring it to you when you go to Ranger School, crush the land nav course at Rap Week, and then you can move on and focus on the next challenge that lies before you during your time at Ranger School. Real quick, for those of you that are new to this channel, we talk about all things military, we talk about all things fitness, career progression, Army schools. So if you like that kind of thing, go ahead and like and subscribe so you don't miss any of my future videos. And for all my returning subscribers out there, thank you very much for coming back. It's good to see you. All right, guys, let's get into it. Land nav at Ranger School. So first of all, land nav takes place on the third day of Rap Week, and it starts super early in the morning, about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, depending on when you go. And it's supposed to be a night into day course, and they give you 5 hours to find 4 out of 5 points. They're supposed to give you 2 hours of night, 3 hours of day, but obviously that's going to fluctuate depending on the time frame that you go. So you might be the guy or gal out there that ends up getting 3 hours of night, 2 hours a day. As far as the difficulty goes on the land nav course, the course itself is not a super difficult course. I would say it's more on like the moderate spectrum of difficulty level as far as Army land nav courses go. You know, I've definitely had to go through harder and more difficult land nav courses throughout my career. That being said, there's a lot of pressure on you at the land nav course at Ranger, which makes it a little more difficult. And there's some other variables about the course that I'll get into here in a minute that just kind of raises the difficulty level to surpass that of like a normal land nav course. To set some basic expectations on what you can plan to see out there at the land nav course during Rap Week, just know that you are not going to be able to use the roads, and if you do, they're going to kick you out immediately. You won't be able to use white light, and it is not a self-correcting course. Now, with all that being said, you can't just show up to Ranger School without having confidence in your abilities to perform land navigation, at least have a basic understanding on the basics of land navigation itself. But this doesn't mean you have to be some sort of land nav god in order to pass the course, okay? You just have to be somewhat good. You have to know what you're doing. Another big variable that makes the Ranger School land navigation course a lot different than any other courses out there is that it has a very large area of swampland. And if you go at a time where it's during the raining season or it just rained the night before, that swampland is going to be extremely wet, and in some places all the way up to your knees. Now, I know this to be factual because when I went, it was rainy and I found 2 points out there in the swamps. And yes, it was up to my knees at one point. Now, when you're doing the course, it's a completely individual event. You can't get any assistance from any other rangers out there. If you're caught even like looking in the same direction as another ranger, you're gonna get kicked off right away. So no talking to your buddies. Don't even try. Don't try to cheat. And the RIs are constantly patrolling the roads and fire breaks. Most likely, if you try to use a fire break, you're gonna get caught and you're gonna get kicked. So that brings me to one of my first pieces of advice. If you're cheating yourself now while you're training for Ranger School or for land nav in general, you need to stop cheating yourself. You need to start getting good at the basics without cheating yourself. Go out there and do complete land nav courses all by yourself. Practice your azimuths, practice your pace count, get confident in your ability to dead reckon and to terrain associate, because those are the kinds of things that you're going to need to be good at when you make your way down to Ranger School. Now, like I said, the course itself is not that difficult, but if you don't have a strong grasp of the basics as far as land navigation goes, you're not going to do well. So no cheating yourself during train up, and definitely don't cheat while you're out there because you're going to get caught and you're going to just waste your time and you're going to get sent home. Now, if I'm remembering correctly, you'll get your 5 points. There's a lot more than just 5 points out there, obviously, but everybody gets their 5 points individually. Everybody's points are different, and the points are spaced out to about 500 to 1 kilometer in between each other throughout all your 5 points. I can't really tell you how far your furthest point's going to be because it's really just based on luck of the draw, and it's going to be dependent on what points you're actually given by the RIs. But I will say that I think it's fair to plan for your furthest point being upwards of 5 kilometers out. Now, talking about the distance separation, that's going to move me into my next piece of advice, and that is how fast you should be traveling from point to point as you're conducting your movement during land navigation. A good TTP to practice while you're at Rap Week doing land navigation is to jog from point to point. You're not going to be able to just hoof it out from point to point at land navigation at Ranger School. You're just not going to make it. You're not going to have enough time. You actually need to at least perform a jog from point to point. This is pretty common knowledge. You might have heard that tip before, but it's absolutely true, and it's absolutely critical that you do that. So while you're doing your training now, before you actually show up to Rap Week, make sure you figure out the difference between your walking pace count and your jogging pace count, and really get a good handle on both of them because they're going to be different. You need to know your pace counts, walking and jogging, before you show up to Ranger School. This is another reason why you have to have serious confidence in your ability to dead reckon and also to train associate. The ability to dead reckon is going to be extremely critical while you're there, especially since you're jogging from point to point. And also the terrain is not all that distinguishable throughout the course. And a lot of the roads out there on the maps that they give you are old and outdated, and so they just won't be there. Or you'll have extra roads that have, that are now there and they're not on the map, and they're going to confuse you. So you really just have to have confidence in your ability to get from one point to the other, to be able to plot, shoot, and follow your azimuth, and not deviate to the left or to the right too much and just make a straight shot all the way out down to the next point. That's really what you got to do and how you need to stay focused while you're out there on the course. That's going to move me on to my next piece of advice, which is making sure that you are extremely thorough and accurate when you're plotting your points. You should be taking all the time you need in the world to sit and make sure you have your points correct before you actually step off and start your jog to the point that you're going to. Now, here's some equipment that I highly recommend that you bring to Ranger School so that this can help you be as accurate as possible while you're out there plotting your points. All right, first thing I want to talk about is your protractor, okay? You definitely want to make sure you bring 2 or 3 brand new protractors out there, and you want to make sure you get the right ones. You don't want to get the ones that are rigid, that are thick, and that break easy, okay? You don't want to get those. This one, if I were to bend it, it would snap. You guys know that probably. Also, if you look at where the measurement tables are for your meters for when you're plotting, the plastic is actually pushed out at least 1 millimeter out from where the measurement for your plot should actually be, if you see that. You guys can see that? Now, it might not seem like a big deal, but when you're moving from point to point and every little, degree matters, and every little meter matters out there, especially when you're moving through the swamps and it's really thick and there's brush everywhere, that little bit of plastic right there that's in your way from your plotting is going to make all the difference when you're plotting your points, especially when you're plotting multiple points. So don't get a protractor like this. You want to look for protractors like this. Now you can see it's not as thick, it's not as super clear, but it doesn't really need to be, but it's much less rigid. I can bend it in half and it won't break. It won't even fold and make that plastic crease. And you can see that it's cut away exactly on the measurement line for where your meters are, for where you need to be plotting your points. That's what you need to look for, okay? So get a protractor like this and get 2 or 3 of them and bring them with you all at the same time while you're out there on the course, just in case you lose your protractor. A common theme with all this equipment that I'm going to show you is you really do need to bring more than you're going to need, because there's a really good chance that you might lose something out there, and if you lose it and you don't have an extra one, you're screwed. You got to remember, this is the 3rd day of Rap Week. You're already going to be tired. You're going to be extra stressed. There's a lot on the line. You're going to be running around this land nav course. The last thing you need to be worried about is losing all your shit. So the next thing I want to make sure you guys get right is the markers that you actually use for plotting. You guys have probably seen the map markers like this, the I don't even remember, Stidlers or whatever, the map markers that look like this that you see all over posts and stuff. Like everybody's got these markers. Go ahead and invest in a set of these markers. I know they're expensive, but they're the best ones for land nav in my opinion. All right, you want to get the completely permanent style markers. Don't get the semi-permanent, because if you get the semi-permanent, all your plots and markings that you put on your map have a good chance of wiping off by themselves when you put them away, or if you rub your elbow on it while you're plotting, stuff like that. You just get the permanent and make sure that you blow on your markings on the map so that it dries right away, okay? You want to get the permanent ones, and you want to get the super fine style, okay? There's a difference. There's fine, which has the F on it right here, and then there's super fine, which has the S on it. The super fine is going to give you a much finer point to work with and to plot your points. And the smaller your points, the more accurate they're going to be. So I would go ahead and invest in 2 sets of these. Don't worry, because you're going to definitely need it at Ranger School anyway. And get yourself at least 2 of these eraser markers. Normally, I'm not a big fan of these eraser markers, but I think for land nav, this is really the best way to go, because your corrections are super fine, and you can just, you know, put this right on the map and just wipe it off with your finger, and it's erased. Normally, I'm a big fan of using these fat dry erase markers when you're erasing permanent ink, but this is more for like when you're doing your op orders and for larger erases, okay? But when you're making fine adjustments, use these markers. All right, another piece of equipment that I would highly recommend is a small clipboard, okay? Don't get a big clipboard because it's just gonna be bulky and in the way, but if you get one of these little small ones, and get one that has, you know, that's good, nice and thick, and is not gonna break on you, get this so you can put your map on here, fold it all up, and you can just have it for plotting. You just carry it around with you while you're out there doing land navigation. Definitely a good idea to bring one of these. And then I also, this is just a good tip for Ranger School in general, you want to have like more than enough Ziploc bags of shapes and sizes. But for a land navigation at Ranger School, you want to get the quart size bags, which is, you know, about this size, and you want it to be a Ziploc slide on the top so you can get easy in and out. And I want you to put everything into this bag after you're done plotting before every movement. You'll put your map in here, you'll put your markers in here, you'll put your protractor in here, you'll zip it up, and then you carry it with you as you're moving from point to point. Don't put it in your pocket, okay? Because if you put it in your pocket, you're just gonna lose it, all right? Don't try to tie it off on yourself. Don't do anything like that. Just store it all away and hold it the entire time you're doing land nav, okay? That's what you need to do. So you make sure you don't lose your shit. There's too many guys out there that end up failing land nav because they lost something. It's just totally avoidable, all right? Don't let that happen to you. Another good TTP that I think you guys should consider is adding some loom tape to your compass. Actually, you should just add loom tape to pretty much every piece of equipment at Ranger School, because there's a high chance that you might lose it in the dark, and if you have some loom tape on it, there's a higher chance that you'll find it on the ground after you've lost it and you're looking for it, okay? So put loom tape on all your stuff out there at Ranger School, but definitely on your compass. Now this is just a TTP of my own. It was just something that worked for me. I'm not saying it's the best thing you can do, but I would absolutely advise you do it because it does work. Just stick a little piece of loom tape right here on the inside of your compass, and that way when you're out there during night land nav, you just have a little bit of extra shine, a little bit of extra light showing into where your compass is, and you'll be able to see it a lot better, okay? A lot of those compasses out there, yeah, they do have like, you know, the glow in the dark needles and the glow in the dark west and east azimuths and all that stuff. But if you just add a big piece of loom tape right there on the inside, it shines that moonlight right into the compass, and it works wonders, man. And absolutely make sure you tie off your compass to yourself when you're doing your land nav. Don't worry, they're gonna make you tie down everything at Ranger School, so I'm not too worried about it. And then the last piece of equipment that I wanted to show you is this Petzl headlamp. This is the exact headlamp that I used at Ranger School, well, at least one of them, but this is the one that survived and I still have today. This is another piece of equipment that you want to add a little strip of loom tape to the side of it, so in case you lose it, you can find it. You'd be surprised how often you'll drop your headlamp and lose it. So just add some loom tape to your headlamp. And this one worked out really well for me. This one's gone through rainstorms. I've dropped it in the water before, and it still works really well. And what I really like about it is once you set it to red lens, it stays on red lens. So when you turn it off and on, it stays on red. Okay, you know, a lot of those headlamps out there, once you turn it off and turn it back on, you have to cycle through the white light. Well, that's no bueno, man, because if you get caught using white light out there at the land nav course, they're gonna kick you off right then and there. They don't care about any excuses, okay? So this headlamp, I'll drop a link to it in the description for you so you can check it out, but I would highly advise that you invest in a few of these headlamps and bring these to Ranger School to use, okay? All right, a couple more quick pieces of advice that I can offer to you, and these are based off my own experience out there when I went through the land nav course. First of all, a lot of people like to go out and try to find the most difficult point during their land nav course first. I would advise that you don't do that. I think you should go ahead and knock out the easiest points, the closest and the easiest points first, then work on the more difficult points, okay? Because the last thing you want to do is go out, you know, to the furthest point or the most difficult point and just spend, you know, half your time looking for that point, end up getting completely disoriented, and now you've just completely screw yourself over for the rest of the course because you've wasted all this time. You may never find that point, and now you're just feeling down and in the dumps about it, and you've lost motivation and you've lost your confidence right off the bat. So go ahead, find the easy points first, knock those out, run to them, knock them out as fast as possible. You will increase your confidence, you'll get your bearings, you'll warm up, then you can go work on the harder points. Secondly, never lose confidence in your own land nav abilities. The course itself, like I mentioned before, isn't accurate to the maps that they give you, okay? Not exactly anyway. The points are definitely where they should be when you mark them, you know, on the map as far as what the grids say. But when you're trying to terrain associate, the maps are just old. The terrain has changed over the years. Some roads have been cleared out. Some have, you know, have brush that have grown over them. So don't trust the roads. Trust your ability to get from point to point. You really need to focus on dead reckoning and just moving in a straight line from point to point when you're out there doing land nav, okay? And as fast as possible, like I said before. So make sure you have a good pace count. Make sure you're really paying attention to your azimuth, and make sure you're really focusing on, you know, remember when you're dead reckoning, you want to find an object that's way out in front of you, run to that object, and then do it again, and just do it over and over again until you get to the point. All right, that's how you need to do it. All right, the last point I want to make, is probably the most important point, is to never quit. No matter how far off you think you are, or how lost you are, or how, you know, not enough time you have, and all these factors that might make you think to quit, never quit. Always keep pushing forward and keep looking for the points that you need to find. I'm going to use myself as an example here. One of my points, one of the hardest points that I had, was right in the middle of the swamp area that everybody's always talking about. I spent maybe 2 hours looking for this point, just couldn't find it to save my life. And I still had a point on my way back to the start point that I thought would be a little easier to get. And then I also had a point that I wasn't even going to attempt because it was just too far out from the start point. I knew that if I went and tried to get that point, there was no way I was going to make it back to the start point in time. So I already had found 2, but I still had to find these 2 more points. The one that I was looking for in the swamp, and then the one that was on the way back to the start point. Well, I had about maybe 45 minutes to get back to the start point. I was probably like 2 or 3 clicks away, and I was like, well, I'm not finding the one in the swamp. I'm probably not going to pass, but I'll at least, you know, go and try to find this last point on the way back to the start point, so I'm as warmed up as possible for the next land nav course I'm going to have to do in a few hours. Because I had already felt defeated. I already thought that I failed the land nav course, and I was like, well, I'll just do my best on this last point, and I'll just show up with 3 out of 5, and I'm just going to get it on the next one. Well, I made my way back to the start point, and I found that point on the way back to the start point like extremely fast, no problem, right there, and I found it right away. I still had like 30 minutes to spare before I had to be back at the start point. Well, I figured, you know what, I shouldn't quit. I'm gonna go all in. I'm gonna sprint to what my gut tells me to do, back towards that last point in the swamp, and I'm gonna find that shit. So that's what I did. I readjusted myself. I reshot an azimuth from the point that I was at to the point that I had been looking for the last 2 hours out in the swamp, and I just started trucking it, man. I sprinted, and lo and behold, I landed right on that point. Got that point, I sprinted back to the start point, and I had maybe 5 minutes to spare before the course was over. But because I didn't quit, I passed, and I didn't have to do land nav again, and today I'm wearing a Ranger tab. So hopefully that story is a good lesson for you. Just do your best out there, maintain your confidence, and no matter what, just go down kicking and screaming. Never quit. All right, guys, well, that's all I got. Hopefully that was helpful for you. And hopefully you can take these tips and tricks, go out there and be successful at Rap Week. If any of you out there are watching and you've been through the course and you have any TTPs of your own or some tips and tricks that you want to offer to the community, please do. Just drop it in the comments. If you like this video and you like this kind of stuff, don't forget to like and subscribe. Here are some of my other videos that I was talking about before. Make sure you go ahead and click on some of those. I'm sure you'll find something that will be useful for you. Besides that, that's all I got, and I will see you on the next one.